before we teach this robot how to pick up this part and put it on another pallet, I'm going to reset the robot to its home position. I'm going to click the end of arm tool here, come down to the bottom corner, set everything to joint method, and zero out all the boxes using the tab key here. Except for joint 5, I'm going to type -90, press enter, hold down my right mouse button and drag. We're going to now create a program in RoboGuide. To do that, I'm going to come up here to the Teach menu and choose Add Simulation Program. First, input a program name. Let's call this pallet, and that's how we spell that type of pallet. Pick place, and I'm using the underscore key. Program names in RoboGuide, underscores where you want spaces. Let's hit OK, and here is a program editor window that pops up. And the first thing we're going to do is record the robot in its home position. This is where we want the robot to start. I can do that by clicking the record button right here. In a previous tutorial, you assigned this part to this pallet and this part to this pallet. We also need to assign this part to the end of arm tooling so that RoboGuide knows that at some point in the program this part will be attached to that tooling in our simulation. The easiest way to do that is to find the part file over here. I'm going to go ahead and collapse the robot controllers. Here's our workpiece. Click and drag and release it on the tool. And if you zoom in, you can see it places it there. And as we do this simulation, we're just going to show and hide these workpieces, and it'll give the appearance that the robot is grabbing one workpiece and moving it. Go ahead and close this. Alright, so far we have recorded the robot in its home position. Next, we want the robot to pick up the part off of this pallet. So come down here and select the part. As soon as you do that, you have these two buttons that become activated in your programming window, pick up and drop. So I've got the part selected on the pallet, and I'm going to click pick up. And this adds instruction number 2. It collapses instruction number 1. We can see that again if we open it here, but instruction number 2, you can see the robot automatically moved to that part on the pallet. Now, instead of moving the part directly from this pallet over to this one, we want the robot to lift up first and then go over and then place the part down. It's safer to do it this way. So to go back to our home position, one way we can do that is select this first line here of program that was our home position, and then come up here and hit this Move To button. And the robot goes back to whatever it was we recorded there. Now I'm going to select the second line of our program again, and with the robot in this position, when I go to the record command, and this time I'm going to use the arrow here, I'll go ahead and use this option joint, and it's going to create a new point for me. It's going to move at 100% fine, which is a type of robot movement where there's a slight pause after the movement. It assigns it program line 5. You may wonder why. Well, if you click this little plus sign here, you can see that it's given it 2 other lines of code here to accomplish the pickup. Now we're going to tell the robot to drop this over on this pallet here. We're going to click this part on this pallet. That activates our pickup and drop buttons again. This time we're going to click drop. The robot moves over to that position where that part is. And now if you run this program, your program run button is right up here. Let's hit play and watch this. So you can see it does simulate picking up the part and moving it to this other pallet. There's some things we need to do to fine-tune it though. RoboGuide also creates this line here which traces the path of the center point of the tool. The blue line shows you the straight distance between each point in your program, and then this lighter line is the actual movement of the robot center point of the tool as it goes between those 2 points. It swings out a little bit in joint movement. When we run the program, we don't want this part to be visible at the start of the program. To do that, you don't want to click on the actual part itself. You want to double click on the palette, because in an earlier tutorial you associated this part with this palette. So in our simulation, when we go to palette 1, we come over here to parts. There's that part. It's called work 05. We don't want that part to be visible when we run the program right at the beginning of the program. We want it to appear later on. So we remove that checkbox and click apply and OK. And now when we run the program, it disappears until the program has finished, and then it shows up. So the last thing we're going to do here is make a little movie file. I'm going to hold down the control key and right drag here. Use your mouse commands to zoom RoboGuide. Remember, if you need to, you can click the mouse button here and get a reminder on what those mouse commands are. And to create a video file of this, go to the menu called Test Run and choose Run Panel. And this gives you a bigger set of buttons than you see here. They are the same buttons, but we're going to click 2D Record. And when you click it on this Run panel, not only is it running our program, but it's actually recording an AVI file. It tells me that it was just created in my Documents folder, in a folder called My Work Cells. So I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to go find that. My Documents, My Work Cells, Watkins Work Cell 1, AVIs. When I try to double click this AVI file, I get an error. So if you right click on it, choose Open With, try using VLC Media Player instead of the Windows Media Player. And the video is a small size, and so it's not recommended that you watch it full screen. It's going to be really fuzzy.